Warning, I'm about to be controversial. As if that's any different than any other day for me. But no, I am. I'm going to, all the experts, all the scholars. So I was listening to this, Glenn Beck does like every Saturday, I think it's every Saturday, like sort of a long interview with someone. And so yesterday he had this interview with Max Lucado. I've heard of him before. I have nothing against him or anything. But he was just talking about like the end times, because I guess 4 out of 10 people believe, that we're facing that. And who knows, but I mean, there's a lot of evidence for it. But putting that aside, that's not what this is about. It's that he said, what he said, what I have heard every church, everybody say, is that this isn't the time to argue. This is the time to just love. Okay, that's the Marianne Williamson path, too, where it's just love everybody. Let's love the people that have abused children, that have enslaved others. That's what God wanted. I don't think this world understands what God views as love. Because everybody has been taught we just turn the other cheek, because it says that in the Bible. But it also says to speak up, doesn't it? So I just wanted to show a verse that I think is very important, that people do not seem to understand, and that's that Jesus didn't want you to love evil. He says it. Let love be genuine. Arbor what is evil. That means be disgusted, hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. To be a genuine love means you're going to have to speak up. I could be wrong, okay? I just don't think that, it seems to be this belief within the Christian community, regardless of what, denomination or non-denominational Christian, there seems to be this belief that to speak up, to argue with somebody, to call attention to something like I do with the Catholic Church, that I'm not being loving. I think that, I guess we'll find out on Judgment Day. I just think that God saw love as that you were to speak up, because it talks about that in the Bible. And not just love things that God hates. God hates abuse to children. God hates the wrongdoing. But it's been taught so forever by all the churches that we're just to love one another. But do you understand what love means then? Because that didn't just mean no matter who it is, I'm going to love them. No, because God says, I don't want you to love evil. And yet there's been this teaching of, but we love the person, we hate the sin. Okay. So, yeah, because of that kind of teaching, what has happened is that people overlook abuse to children in the 75-year history of the Catholic Church. And they're not the only church, but they're the one that has the worst abuse, especially to children. It's a sacrificial thing, in my opinion, because it doesn't get better. And yet what they do is they say we're going to clean up our act, and we just ask for forgiveness. And I've sat back and thought about this, because God wants you to think about these things, not just go along with what every pastor says or priest, because they all say the same thing. Well, we all have to love one another. Okay, God did not want you to love evil. He wanted you to speak up and call it out. He wanted you to do your part. So when I hear somebody say that, especially nowadays, how we just need to not argue with people, we just need to love one another, I think, okay, very misguided person, yet has been studying the scriptures so long, or have you just been deciding that whatever everyone else tells you, they know best? Because I think they're all wrong. Because there's so many areas the church has gotten wrong. And where they've gotten it wrong is because they've leaned on their own understanding of what they think God wants. So God talked to the Pharisees about how they They only take care of the outside of the cup. They don't clean the inside of the cup. And do people remember how much, I mean, when Jesus was yelling at them, what hypocrites you are, I mean, that's like the worst thing you'd want to hear from Jesus is, woe to you hypocrites. But he was so upset about how it was just about the outside. It's just about what they wore on the outside. And I'm not talking, I know I've talked many times about how the Catholic Church is just like the Pharisees. But even the churches are that way. And it's because it glorifies man, not God. This is a beautiful church. We have them everywhere. They're all over the world, especially the Catholic churches. They're stunning. And some people say, oh, I just felt God come over me in them. Yeah, I don't think so. No. Because this is just the outside. It may be stunning and it's, the artwork is so magnificent. But what's inside many of them is just waste. So although this is beautiful, although people would want to go get married here because you could say, oh, it's the most beautiful church in the world, okay? But that's for man. These have all been built up for man, not for God. You think God cares about all this? No, he cared about what was going on inside. Yet just like how the Pharisees only took care of how they looked on the outside so everybody in the marketplace would see how special they were, but the inside was just laid waste. Same thing. And yet, throughout the history of the Catholic Church, but many of them, they all teach the same thing, and it leads nowhere. Not unless you venture out, which is what they don't want you to do. They don't want you to go to the true teacher. And I just hear it forever, it's about love, okay, but what, do you understand love from just your man or woman, how you think it's supposed to be? Because what I see is that means to everybody that, no, we don't ever stand up with conviction and call something out that should have been being called out every single day for the past 75 years. But instead, like child abuse in the Catholic Church, but instead what people do is, oh, we have to love, we have to forgive. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that you should still stay where the fruit is bad. Where God did not want you to be hanging out with the bad fruit. He wanted you to recognize what is producing bad fruit and then stay away from it. That's how he said you would know. He didn't mean you'll know and then stay there and keep listening to them. So I had read this article. That's why I'm mentioning this about all these beautiful churches. Is this guy was saying, the Catholic, it was some article, the Catholic Church is ugly. It's just ugly now. But yet he was saying he's so glad that he got his kids through the Catholic school and their teachings, and without anything happening to his sons because of the massive child abuse that's been in its history. And I'm thinking, that shouldn't be your thought. Your thought should be, because of their 75-year history of child abuse, that means everything they've taught has been wrong. And they all went to seminary school, so they all teach the same thing. And yet they never do fix their ways because it's not in truth. It's not in Jesus's truth. So, yeah, you can be happy you sent your kids there, but what did they really learn? They didn't really learn the true teachings of Jesus. Not in the way they were, needed to learn it. Not that there's not time for them still to. But yet what he goes on to say in the article is but it's the magnificent churches and the breathtaking art and the stained glass windows. And all I could think is the Pharisees. It's the outside of the cup again. It's all what man thinks would please God. But nobody ever sitting back and really going to God or praying about these things and saying, God, what would you like? What is love from your eyes? And I think it's speaking truth.